Hi everyone, how's it going? How are you doing? It's Microwave Sam. In this video will be a workshop on Amazon EC2, Namecheap, and cloud computing. I'll break up this workshop into 3 separate parts. I'll talk about conceptually the use of cloud computing. Then I'll work my way to my usual style of teaching, the setup process for Amazon EC2 and connecting an instance or virtual server with a Namecheap domain. There's a nice Berkeley paper that gives an overview of what exactly is cloud computing, and it's important to understand what is it. I'll leave that in the description, but in this video, I'll try to explain the cloud and how to use it through Amazon EC2 in my own words. Originally, if you want to have a server for a website, you need to buy a computer or hardware to be that website server. You needed hardware for any software website that you want to share to people on the internet. Now, cloud computing involves applications delivered over the internet. It's a service provided over the internet built upon data centers. The best example is cloud computing when it comes to Amazon EC2 can almost be seen as a remote computer. It's an on-demand, pay-as-you-go service. What I mean is, for Amazon EC2, you can create a virtual server or a virtual computer from the comfort of your home with absolutely no hardware. You pay for that virtual computer by the hour at very low cost. It eliminates commitment of upfront purchase of the hardware. For example, let's say I want to make a website for my portfolio, a personal website. If I were to use my own hardware, I would purchase basically a computer with a certain amount of RAM, hard drive memory, and other parts. I build that computer and put my favorite version of an operating system and install the tools to create my personal website. Code a little HTML, CSS. Okay, well, I've spent, let's say, $100, and I've already made that commitment because I bought those parts. That computer is sitting in my room. It has my website. It's shared on the internet. Now with cloud computing versus the hardware, I go to Amazon Web Services EC2 and easily press a few buttons on their site to create the same computer remotely as a virtual computer. It comes with the operating system installed and I have access to that computer remotely. Depending on the power of the virtual server, I pay as low as a penny per hour. And if it's a micro instance for Amazon EC2, then I could essentially pay $1 per month if I don't receive too much traffic. You don't pay upfront with cloud computing. You pay by the hour as you go. There's no commitment. You can create as many virtual servers, virtual computers you want, and you can destroy them anytime and create new ones. Think about this. If you had the hardware and you had the website and you didn't want that website to be on the internet, you didn't even want a website, then hey, you have this hardware and it's just sitting there. It's useless. But with cloud computing, you can create as many virtual servers and then delete them if you don't need them anymore. Cloud computing is based on the concept to allow you to let go of your virtual machines in storage when they aren't useful to you anymore and create new ones when you actually need them. It's a need-based computing system. That's a great thing. It saves you money when your demand for your site is unknown and if you even want this site to be up for the month. For example, a web startup will need to support a spike in demand when it becomes popular. That's when you start creating a lot of virtual servers to hold that demand, followed potentially by a reduction when some of those visitors leave. That's when you start deleting those virtual servers that you don't really need. Even when it comes to actual computations, the Berkeley paper states that using 1,000 EC2 machines for 1 hour costs the same as using one machine for 1,000 hours. Moving on to talk about the public cloud. Public clouds are available to use cloud computing for anyone. All these services that are public are within the cloud computing area. Google has Google App Engine, Amazon has Amazon EC2, those are public clouds, and there are plenty more services. The usefulness of Amazon EC2 is that an instance is almost like physical hardware. You can control nearly the entire virtual computer. And Namecheap is just a domain registrar and web hosting company where you can buy domain names, website names. We'll create an Amazon EC2 instance and connect it with a domain or website name from Namecheap. Hopefully, you have an understanding of what cloud computing is, and Amazon EC2 is just an example of cloud computing. From this point of the tutorial onward, it's going to be a live demonstration of how to set things up. First thing you want to do is open up your browser, go to aws.amazon.com, and if you never used AWS before, you can sign into the console over here with this orange button. And creating a free account is really great because when you do I am a new user over here, create a free account, then free accounts for EC2 in particular, you get a year of free micro-instances. Micro-instances are great for personal websites, static pages with not a lot of traffic. You have that completely for free. A micro-instance is basically 20 gigs of free space, 8 gigs RAM, maybe something like that. The RAM amount, I'm not particularly sure, but it's good for small services like a personal website portfolio. So if you do have an account, just sign in. And it brings you to the management console. First thing you want to do is at the top right, you can select your region. I selected US East, North Virginia, because the East Coast, I live there, North Virginia is closest to me. Now, Amazon Web Services, you can see, provides a lot of different cloud services. We're going to use EC2 over here, virtual servers in the cloud. So click on that. And now, for resources, it shows the number of running instances you have. Now, we're going to just create a launch instance for the blue button. It's going to immediately bring us to the setup, where step 1 is to choose an AMI, which is basically your operating system. We're going to use a Linux-based operating system, which provides a lot of variability, customizability, and I like to use Ubuntu flavors of Linux, so we're going to select Ubuntu server for this tutorial. Hit the blue button at the right side. Now choose an instance type. So these instance types basically give you a default configuration for microinstance. You get 1 vCPU, memory 1 GB. I was a little bit off on that. And network performance compared to the rest is low to moderate, but it's free tier eligible, so if you have a free account, you get the first 12 months for free. Awesome. So we're going to hit next on the bottom right. And configure instance details. These instance details, if you want to set networks or specific subnet or IP networking details, we can just hit next and leave this by default. So next, add storage. Now for adding storage, I think the 8 gigs is pretty useful. It's good enough for our purposes. We're just going to create a simple website. Hit next, tag instance. Over here we can set case sensitive key value pairs, and you can leave this by default for this tutorial. Hit next. Now for security group, it's really important to create a new security group with some security group types. So basically the security group is a firewall, different port ranges you can open up. So we're going to create a new security group name. I'll just create a tutorial for the name, but you should name it maybe something like website security, basic website security. And then for description, you can leave that by default. So the rules that you want is absolutely you want SSH, because SSH is basically connecting to that virtual server remotely. SSH is the protocol to connect remotely. So add rule, we're going to add a rule for HTTP, which is the rule for basically browsers use HTTP port 80 to connect and view a website. So you absolutely need this open. You add a rule for maybe HTTPS, because this is the alternative rule if you want to add security. That security certificate, HTTPS, is the basic. You might notice on some websites HTTPS is before the website name. Okay, so now we can also add the final rule, which I like, is port 8080. So it's going to be a custom TCP rule with port range 8080, because sometimes browsers, websites sometimes have a port 8080 as their communication. So it's sometimes good to leave that open. And you can add additional rules for, let's say, SCP and other rules like that, types. So since that's done, we can review and launch. You can go down and launch at the bottom right. Now, selecting a key pair or key create a new key pair. These key pairs are basically, a key is exactly like a key to a door. You just have to use it to confirm that you are the guy who can enter this or connect to this virtual server. So you create a key file and you basically send that key file while you're connecting via SSH to connect to the server. So we're going to create a new key pair and just call it website, basic website. And once you get the name down, you can download the key pair. I'm going to save it to my desktop. And you launch the instance. So for using SSH, there are a lot of different protocols to use SSH. There's basically programs. If you're on Windows, it's a little bit harder than if you were on a Mac or Linux. The instance is going to be launching. So if we go back, hit the little cube, go back to EC2, running instances, and you can check that this thing is initializing at the moment. So basically, as I was saying, you need a client that can SSH. So programs like Cygwin, I've had a tutorial on Cygwin, I've had a tutorial on PuTTY, and you can use these programs to take advantage and use the SSH protocol to connect to your server from remotely. So we're just going to give this a second to boot up and initialize. It'll only take a second. I'll refresh it. Nope, it's almost done. So it's going to be initializing, but basically I use Cygwin normally, and I've used system variable to connect it to my command prompt. By default, the command prompt doesn't have access to SSH. You need to have some other program to get the SSH library. So I've connected the two with my command prompt. Now, once you open command prompt, you'll be in your user folder, and you want to use cd to change directory to your desktop. Then you're on your desktop, and I saved my key to my desktop. Now if you do ls, which is list, like so, ls means listing all the contents of that directory. So we're gonna find basic website, which is somewhere here. Basic website, yes, is right here. So one thing about Windows is it messes around with your permissions, and Amazon is really strict about the keys for your permissions. If you do ls space -l, you use the -l flag to print additional information about those files. So if we find, let's see, basic website.pem, we find that I own the user. This is my user. And there is none for the group name, which is a problem because normal files, if you're on a Linux system, they always have a group name, and AWS expects your file, your key, to have a group name. So basically, with that being said, we're gonna have to add a group. So we're gonna use a command called chown, and then if you do :users, basically the colon means that we're signifying that we're changing the group, and we're going to add users for that group. And then finally, we're going to type in website.pem. So we're changing the user group to users, basic website for .pem. Now, after you do that, if you do -l again, you will find that your file has a user group. So if we scroll up, users group, that file is now belong to user group, or basic website.pem as a user group. So the permissions itself are incorrect. So over here you can see rwx, rwx --. So basically this is separated into three portions, like so. So this rwx is for the owner, this rwx is for the group, I believe, and then this ---- is everyone else. So basically, AWS expects you to have only something that's accessible by the owner. So we're going to have to change the permissions and basically make this second section ---- for no permissions. So to do that, to change the permissions of that particular file, we're going to have to do something called chmod. So chmod changes those permissions at the left side. And we're going to give it 600 The 6 over here means read and write. So RWX means read, write, executable. And we're just gonna allow it to be read, write by the owner. Then the 0 is the next section, which means 0 permissions. And then the next section after that is 0 permissions. Basically, R is equal to 4, W for write is equal to 2, X for executable is equal to 1. So 4 plus 2 is 6. So I'm basically allowing this file, the owner of the file, to read and write. And then you type in the file name afterwards, like so. Then you press enter. If I do ls-l again, I'll see the permissions are changed for that particular file. And you can see for basic website.pem, it's just read and writable. Okay, well that works. And now we can finally use the SSH protocol to get to this EC2 instance. So on the EC2 instance dashboard for running instances, if you click on the particular instance that you just launched, it'll always have the key name so you can differentiate which instance is which. You can find the public DNS at the bottom or the public IP. So we're going to copy the public IP at the bottom, right click, copy. Okay, so now in this directory, you want to do you type in SSH, which is the protocol to connect to a virtual server remotely. Then the -i flag is used for connecting to with a key. And then you type in the key name. And then the basic user is for these instances. Based on your operating system, we selected an Ubuntu operating system, so the user is Ubuntu. And then you paste in your IP. So here's the command as follows. -i refers to the key, basic website.pem, and the user by default is Ubuntu for Ubuntu instances, and you put in at the IP address. So if you do enter, you'll connect to, well, it'll give you, are you sure you want to continue? Yes, of course we do. So you type in yes, and you continue. Now you're on your EC2 instance. Cool, we're on this terminal base. Basically, if you've used a Linux instance before, it's exactly the format that you would have on a Linux instance. So with the same commands like change directory, cd, go to cd/, and then ls, and you can see everything on the instance. So it's basically you have remote access to this virtual computer. It's like a virtual computer. You have nearly full access to everything on this Ubuntu Linux instance. So now you have that done, we're gonna install some packages. So first thing is sudo -apt-get. apt-get is basically this whole package system that Ubuntu relies on. And sudo is a super user. Basically, we need full administrator access. Sudo is referring to administrator access, and we're gonna do sudo apt-get update. So sudo apt-get update basically updates the package list that apt-get relies on. So once package lists are updated, we can get the next package, which is sudo apt-get install Apache 2. So we're getting the library for Apache 2, and install is just installing that library. So we're gonna enter, then you enter Y, and it's gonna install Apache 2. For websites, you always need the Apache 2, or there's also Nginx. You can also use Node.js for web server. Web servers provide a way of connecting your instance, your virtual server, to the internet, and it will be live from this public IP. Basically, if I take this public IP down here, open up a new tab, go to the IP, press enter, you can see Apache 2 Ubuntu default page. The web server communicates via port 80 by default and sends it off. If you go visit the IP address, you can obviously see the website. So it's up, it's running. So now that the website is running, we're going to connect it to EC2. Well, not EC2, but Namecheap. So once you have this website running, usually when you have an EC2 instance, you want to make an elastic IP, because with this instance, EC2 has a little thing where you can resize instances, add more memory. It's a need-based concept, as I explained earlier in the video. You can give it more memory when you need it. So when you do that, it will change the public IP unless you have an elastic IP. So it's important to have this static IP. It's good for connecting with different instances, but most important part is if you ever make changes to your instance, and if you have an elastic IP, then that IP address will not change, which is good. So on the AWS console dashboard, if we go to network and security and go to elastic IP, we're going to allocate a new address. And yes, we want to allocate a new IP. So it gives you randomly generated IP, view elastic IP, and it's right over here, but it's not connected to anything. So we can associate an address. So when we're associating an address, we want to connect it to an instance, but let's check our instance to see what's the ID. The instance ID for the one that I want is 10FD. Okay, so remember that. Go back to network and security, elastic IPs, go to this, allocate address, then type in 10F, which is right over here, and it provides private IP, and you can associate. So after you click associate, that instance, if you go back to instances over here, you can see that, grab over here, it has this new public IP. So this IP is new, and let's just copy this public IP and we'll go to it. It's the same site. Now this IP will be static. It's the static IP that was generated, elastic IP, and this will not change. Also, the cool thing about AWS EC2 instances is they also provide a public DNS over randomly generated EC2 your IP address dot compute, and you can also go copy that, paste it, and it's the same site. But now, you have this site and you've messed around with it. Let's say that you've added some stuff to it and you want to connect it to an actual domain name. Like if I want to give it microwavesam.com, for example. Namecheap is a pretty popular domain registrar where you can purchase domain names and connect it with your EC2 instance. So if you go to namecheap.com, I'll leave this link in the description. We'll sign in or sign up. If you don't have an account already, you can sign up and you can sign in to your account. But first and foremost, the cool thing about Namecheap is I think they have something called sc.me. Yes, they still have this. So Namecheap for education is a great thing for students. Claim your free domain name. So you can get a .me domain name for free if you're a student. So basically, you find a free domain. If the .me is available, then you can search and get it for free. More information about this is it's more for college students, I think. Namecheap education programs, we're working with students to get more undergrads online. So I got a free .me domain name. I'll sign in my account. And for me, I got a domain name called cm4d.me. The name doesn't matter, but we got a free domain name. So if you log in, you can manage your domains under your account, and you can see all your domains under your account. For example, I got this .me for free because Namecheap was giving free domain names for undergrad students from universities. So if you select cm4d.me, you can see information about that particular domain. If we go to the left underneath host management, go to all host records, you can see the host records for that domain. Now by default it has some random the IP address, and then it has free.park your domain, which gives you a notice that you can have something on this domain address. So first thing we want to do is go back to your EC2 instance. You copy the IP address because now that we have this elastic IP set, it's not going to change. It's good for us. We want that public IP. And for the host name, for the IP address URL, you want to paste the IP address from that elastic IP underneath that instance that we had. And for the www, you want to also paste the little IP address that we had. For the record type, both of these should be an A address. And finally, you save the changes, and that IP address will now be connected to this domain name. So if I go to cm4d.me, let's click save first. Now in a couple minutes, CM4D will redirect me to this IP address. So basically, CM4D is my website. So we've created, a brief personal website. On your actual terminal, if you want to adjust that index.html, change that HTML to fit your own needs, add your own content. Basically, on this, you want to make sure you connect to your instance. Okay, for some reason this instance has frozen for a second, but let's open up a new terminal. CD to my desktop, change directory to my desktop. Okay, it seems that my connection was reset. I remember now. It's because I changed the IP address, and when the IP address changes, your connection will be reset. So if you press up, you go to the previous command, which is really extremely useful. Now that the IP is connected, let's try to get to cm4d.me and see if Namecheap has updated the IP address. So if I go to cm4d.me, like so, it brings me to the Apache 2 page, which is awesome. Now we know that the Namecheap domain, my website name, is connected to my EC2 instance over here. So now that we've confirmed that, the great thing is that you can change this ssh-i basic website.pem Ubuntu at cm4d.me, because I'm sure that's hard to remember that public IP. Definitely. So now we can just SSH directly to the domain name. It's going to redirect to the IP address to that domain name, and I should be able to connect to it. Now it's going to bring me this prompt again. I'm going to hit yes, and I'm connected. I'm on my cm4d.me. I'm on my IP address that I set up on EC2. Now to adjust the files for that EC2 instance and that web page, because when you install Apache 2, basically all the website pages, HTML content is on this folder. So if you change the directory to /var, / brings you to the root of the page, then go to var, www, then HTML, do ls for listing the contents, you find the index.html. So if first of all, we need a text editor, and a really good text editor that's really friendly for new people is Nano. So we're gonna install sudo apt-get install Nano, press enter. It's already installed, that's great. So we don't need to install anything. If you do nano index.html, it's going to open up. Actually, we also need sudo, because index.html will be something that we need administrative access. So if you do sudo but before any command, it will give you administrative access. So we go sudo nano index.html, enter, and we see the contents of the page. Now there's a lot of stuff, but basically you can recognize that it's Apache 2 Ubuntu default page. It works. Basically the same exact content as you see on cm4d right now. It says Apache 2 Ubuntu default page. It works. Now this stuff, I'm gonna do Control O. Basically how these commands work is that caret sign means control, and so you can do Control X to exit, Control O to save. Write out just means save, and those are the basic commands you need. You can type immediately in this phase. So we're gonna let's try to delete everything. So we're gonna hold. Okay, so let's do Control X. No, we're gonna do sudo remove. rm means remove index.html. So now that we removed it, we're gonna do sudo nano index.html to create a new index page. To give you an example of how you would create your personal website with this system. Now you can do this locally, but I'm just showing you how to edit it right on the virtual computer. So if we do hello world, and then we do Control O, we come to file name to write. You just press enter on this prompt, and then it writes that line, basically saves. Control O is just another word for saving. And then you Control X to exit. Now if you refresh this page on cm4d.me, it updates not only on the EC2 instance, but since it's connected via Namecheap, this cm4d site will reflect that change from the EC2 instance, and it will say hello world. Now you know how to change EC2 instances, how to make one instance connected to Namecheap, and hopefully you learned how to create EC2 instance and connect it to Namecheap. That was my point of the tutorial, explaining you some of the concepts of cloud computing. Now you can create a virtual server of your personal website without even buying the hardware. That was a great thing I wanted to get through to everyone about cloud computing. You don't have to buy hardware. You can do it from the comfort of your own laptop at home. Create a virtual instance that won't even cost anything if you're just creating small stuff, and even the cost for the big stuff, it provides variability, customability based on your need. So that's a great thing about cloud computing. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you learned a thing or two about AWS and EC2 instance. Please rate, comment, subscribe. See you guys later.